today we can start first lesson from SS1, Standard 9. The first lesson is Sun, the ultimate source. In this lesson, we can study about the process of heat transfer in the atmosphere, heat budget, temperature, its distribution in the atmosphere, the factors influencing the distribution of temperature, global distribution of temperature, water in the atmosphere, and different forms of precipitation. And at first we can study the distribution of temperature in the atmosphere. Okay, first we can discuss about the factors influencing the heat transfer of the atmosphere. Do you heard about the different various processes of heat transfer in the atmosphere? There are mainly 4 processes that are influencing in the heat transfer in the atmosphere. First one is conduction, then convection, then advection, then terrestrial radiation. These are the 4 processes of heat transfer in the atmosphere: conduction, convection, advection, terrestrial radiation. Do you heard about insolation? What is insolation? Insolation is the incoming solar radiation. It is the solar energy that reaches the earth in the form of short waves. Insolation is the short form of incoming solar radiation. And another process is there, that is terrestrial radiation. Terrestrial radiation is the outgoing solar radiation. The outgoing solar radiation is in the form of a long wave. That is the difference between insolation and terrestrial radiation. Insolation is maximum at 2 p.m. So we can experience the higher temperature on the surface of the earth at 2 p.m. But the terrestrial radiation is maximum at 4 a.m. So we can experience minimum temperature at 4 a.m. Now let us start the different processes of heat transfer: conduction, convection, advection, and terrestrial radiation. First one is conduction. What is conduction? This is a process of heat transfer from the surface of the earth to the atmosphere. And what is the definition to conduction? Heat is transferred to the part of the atmosphere close to the hot surface of the earth. That means, first the earth absorbs the energy, solar energy, by insolation, and after the absorption it started transmitting this energy from the lower molecule to the upper molecule. That is called conduction. Transfer of heat from the part of the atmosphere close to the hot surface of the earth. The next one is convection. Convection is the second process of heat transfer in the atmosphere. In the conduction process, the molecules do not change their position. It just transfers the heat from one molecule to another molecule. But in the convection process, the molecules move from one place to another place. That means it moves from the lower part of the atmosphere to the upper part of the atmosphere. Then we can give a definition to the convection process. That is, heated air expands and rises upwards. The lower part of the atmosphere heated up due to conduction process, and when it heats up, it expands and rises upwards, and the hot air reaches the upper atmosphere. That is the second process of the heat transfer in the atmosphere. Next one is advection. Third process is advection. Advection is the horizontal transfer of heat through wind. Advection is the horizontal transfer of heat through winds. What is wind? Wind is the horizontal movement of air. There are two types of movements to wind. The first one is, there are two types of movement to air. The first one is wind and the second one is air current. And wind is the horizontal movement of the air in the atmosphere. It can move only horizontally. But the air current is the vertical movement of air in the atmosphere. And this advection is happening because of the horizontal movement of air. Heat transfers from one place to another place because of this horizontal wind. You can study about the air current later. In the next class, you can study about air current. Okay, next one is terrestrial radiation. Terrestrial radiation is the re-radiation of the Earth's surface. That means heat is transferred from the surface of the Earth to the outer space in the form of long waves. That means in this process, heat is transferred from the lower part of the atmosphere to the upper part of the atmosphere in the form of waves. But in the other three processes, conduction, convection and advection, the heat is transferred from the lower part of the atmosphere to the upper part of the atmosphere by molecules of air. But here in this process, heat is transferred from the lower part to the upper part as long waves. You already studied that about insolation. That insolation is in the form of short waves, but terrestrial radiation is in the form of long waves. Now, we studied about all the four processes of heat transfer in the atmosphere. I will repeat it once again. Conduction, convection, advection and terrestrial radiation. In these four processes, among all these, conduction, convection and advection are confined to the near atmosphere of the Earth. That means the air is heated up due to, the lower part of the air is heated up due to the first three processes, that is conduction, convection and advection. But the fourth one, terrestrial radiation, is helpful to heated up the upper part of the atmosphere or outer space. All the other three processes, conduction, convection and advection, are helpful for the heating up of air in the lower atmosphere, but only the terrestrial radiation is helpful for the heating up of upper atmosphere, that is outer space. Now we can repeat again the difference between insolation and terrestrial radiation. Insolation is the incoming solar radiation, and it is in the form of short waves. But terrestrial radiation is the outgoing solar radiation, but it is in the form of long waves. That is an important point in this lesson. That is the difference between insolation and terrestrial radiation. And the next part is about another important process happening in the atmosphere. Recently, there are so many news about the global warming. Do you heard about it? What is global warming? Global warming is the increase in the temperature of the atmosphere. The temperature is tremendously increasing nowadays. We know that there are so many gases present in the atmosphere: oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, krypton, ozone, etc., etc. But all these gases are not cause for the temperature, increase in temperature in the atmosphere. Do you heard about greenhouse gases? Yes. What are greenhouse gases? Which are the important greenhouse gases? These greenhouse gases are the main cause for the increase in temperature in the atmosphere. And which are they? Mainly, there are three greenhouse gases. They are methane, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide. I think you heard about the increase in the number of vehicles and increase in the number of factories may cause the increase in the temperature in the atmosphere. That is because of the increase in the amount of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane. These gases can absorb heat energy, more heat energy. Because of this reason, if the amount of these gases increases in the atmosphere, definitely the temperature will increase. That means it can absorb more heat energy than any other gases. So, if the amount of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane increase in the atmosphere, definitely the temperature will increase. Then, these greenhouse gases and global warming are closely related. I think now you understood about the relationship between these two. Because of the increase in the amount of these gases, there will be an increase in the temperature in the atmosphere. And now you understood that the atmosphere is heated mainly by terrestrial radiation. And this terrestrial radiation occurs mostly at night. Why? This terrestrial radiation occurs mostly at night. Do you know the reason for this? That is because when insolation is happening, the earth absorbs the heat energy, and after the absorption, it re-radiates the energy to the outer space. That is terrestrial radiation. And this terrestrial radiation is continuing in the night also. Because after the absorption, that means when the heat energy, after the end of the heat energy reaching on the surface of the earth, it can re-radiate the energy. So this is continuing, this terrestrial radiation is continuing in the night also. And this is the main topic today I want to take. Now we can repeat it once more. In this topic, we studied about insolation and terrestrial radiation and its difference. Insolation is the incoming solar radiation, terrestrial radiation is the outgoing solar radiation. Insolation is in the form of short waves and terrestrial radiation is in the form of long waves. And next we studied about the processes of heat transfer in the atmosphere. There are 4 processes. First one is conduction, then convection, then advection, and then terrestrial radiation. Once again, I repeat, conduction is the transfer of heat from the lower atmosphere. That means the atmosphere close to the hot surface of the earth from one molecule to another molecule. The second process is convection, that is, the heated air expands and rises upwards. That means the hot air from the lower atmosphere expands and rises upwards, and when it reaches in that upper atmosphere, it becomes cool. Then third one, advection. It is the horizontal transfer of heat through wind. This heat transfer is possible through the wind. That is the horizontal transfer of heat. And the last one is terrestrial radiation. And this terrestrial radiation is happening because of the long wave radiation. It is not the heat transfer from one molecule to another molecule. It is happening because of the long wave radiation. And the outer space becomes heat because of this terrestrial radiation. Conduction, convection, and advection are the 3 processes by which the lower atmosphere is heated up. Okay, now it's time to wind up our class. Next day, we can take the next topic, heat budget and factors influencing the temperature. Thank you.